Hey, did you see the market close today? Bharti Airtel's shares were down just a bit, 0.36%, closing at 1,669.5 rupees on the NSE. But even with that slight dip, there's some big news about their promoter holdings.
Oh, interesting. I did see a headline about Bharti Telecom, the promoter, increasing its stake in Airtel. It seems like a continuation of their plan, with announcements going back to 2022, 2023, and even late last year. The slight share price dip today doesn't seem to reflect the overall confidence this move suggests.
So, what exactly happened this time? I mean, I saw something about Indian Continent Investment Limited or ICIL selling shares.
Right. So ICIL, which is another promoter group entity, sold about 0.84% of its shareholding in Airtel. That's around 5.11 crore shares. The sale amounted to roughly 8,485.11 crore rupees.
Wow, that's a significant amount of shares. And Bharti Telecom played a role in this sale, right?
Exactly. Bharti Telecom actually anchored the trade by acquiring about 1.20 crore of those shares, which is about 24% of ICIL sale. It sounds like they wanted to make sure the shares went to some solid long-term investors.
That's interesting. So basically, they wanted to control who got those shares?
That's the impression I get. They wanted marquee long-term investors, both global and domestic, to get their hands on it.
Gotcha. So this isn't the first time Bharti Telecom has increased its stake, is it?
Nope. Back in November 2024, they acquired an additional 1.2% stake from ICIL. So this recent move is part of a bigger strategy to strengthen their position.
And where does that put Bharti Telecom now in terms of ownership?
Well, with this latest acquisition, Bharti Telecom now holds around 40.47% of Airtel.
Okay, so they're really solidifying their control. What's the overall goal here?
It seems like they want to reinforce their position as the main entity holding the controlling stake in Airtel. They're focused on gradually increasing their stake.
And they mentioned something about maintaining a prudent leverage profile. What does that mean?
Good question. Prudent leverage profile basically means they want to increase their stake without taking on too much debt. They want to be responsible about how they finance these acquisitions.
So they're playing it safe while still increasing their control. Makes sense. So, I mean, what's the bigger picture here? Why is Bharti Telecom so keen on increasing its stake?
Well, increasing their stake gives them more control and influence over Airtel's strategic decisions. It also sends a strong signal to the market that they're confident in Airtel's future.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like the captain of a ship making sure they're firmly at the helm, right?
Exactly. It's about securing their position and guiding the company's direction. It's a pretty confident move, all things considered.
Right. It shows commitment. So, what do you think this means for Airtel's investors? Should they be excited, worried, or just meh?
Well, generally, when a major shareholder increases their stake, it can be seen as a positive sign. It suggests they believe the company is undervalued and has growth potential. While the stock dipped slightly today, this bigger move by the promoter could be a more important long-term indicator.
So, it could boost investor confidence?
Potentially, yes. It could also lead to a higher share price in the long run as more investors see the company as a worthwhile investment. Of course, it's always a good idea for investors to do their own research and, maybe check with a certified expert before making any investment decisions. Today's minor fluctuations shouldn't be the sole basis for any decision.
Absolutely, especially in these times. Always good to have a second opinion. Disclaimer: we advise investors to check with certified experts before taking any investment decisions.
Precisely. So, where do you think Airtel is headed in the next few years? I mean, with all this going on?
Well, with Bharti Telecom tightening its grip, I'd expect to see more strategic initiatives aimed at long-term growth. They seem to be playing the long game. I wonder if they're thinking about expanding into new markets or technologies.
That's a good point. They could be looking at things like 5G expansion, digital services, or even exploring opportunities in the IoT space.
Speaking of digital services, I've been meaning to upgrade my data plan. It's almost as if they knew I was thinking about it.
Funny how that works, right? I've been happy with their services, so I might just look into that myself. If you're finding this conversation insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Good point. So, is there anything else that stood out to you from this announcement? Any hidden details?
Well, the fact that they specifically mention allocating shares to key marquee long only names is interesting. It suggests they're focused on attracting stable long term investors who are less likely to engage in short term speculation.
So, they're building a solid foundation of investors, like reinforcing the walls of a castle, right?
That's a great analogy. They're creating a strong and stable base of support. It's all about long term stability and growth.
It does sound like they have a pretty clear vision for Airtel's future and they're taking concrete steps to make that vision a reality.
Exactly. And with Bharti Telecom increasing its stake, it sends a clear message that they're in it for the long haul.
So, overall, it sounds like a pretty positive development for Airtel and its investors, despite the slight dip in share price today. It will be interesting to see how this plays out in the coming years.
Definitely. It's always good to keep an eye on these kinds of announcements and see how they impact the company's performance. And who knows what other moves Bharti Telecom might make in the future.
Well, whatever happens, we'll be here to break it down and, try to make sense of it all. Thanks for the insight.
Anytime. It's always fun to dive into these announcements and see what's really going on behind the scenes.